There's something
totally
different.
several
I don't know if you saw this. Tim Walz is now saying about Trump supporters, and forgive me, I'm just reading a quote from Tim Walz. I think I could kick most of their.
Oh boy, he'd be in trouble.
Is there any way to know?
Well, he's a loser. The guy's a loser. He lost an election. He played a part. Usually a vice president doesn't play a part, they say. I think Tim played a part. I think he was so bad that he hurt her. But she hurt herself, and Joe hurt them both. They didn't have a great group, but I would probably put him at the bottom of the group.
Have you heard that Biden wants to get back involved for Democratic politicians, fundraising and campaigning against your policies?
I hope so.
Mr. President, there's several families. Mr. President,
This guy said, I hope so. They're working on Trump's third term, right? You guys know that, right? They're working on it. I heard Steve Bannon said they're working on it. I've heard Trump bring it up in front of a crowd before. They're working on it. They're going back to FDR times where it happened, and they're trying to get him a third term. And it might work. It might just work. I don't know. I don't know what they have to do. I don't know if it has to be wartime or what, but if you look into the case of FDR, he almost got 4 terms. So there's that to think about. A lot of people don't know that. But yeah, Tim Walz beating someone up. Not likely. Not like I imagine a lot of this from Tim Walz. I imagine a whole lot of that as he's on the ground. That's what I imagine from Tim Walz. I don't imagine much of this. I don't imagine that. I imagine a lot of this. That's what I imagine from Tim Walz. He's funny. He's just saying things on podcasts now. He's like, I'm masculine. With his with his housewife energy. He has housewife energy. He's not beating people up. That's not how it goes for Tim Walz. It just doesn't. But yeah, they are working on the third term. I would love to know what that looks like. I would love to know if that's possible. And you know what? I don't think I would be concerned. I'd be like, hold on. You're supposed to get 2 terms. What's going on? I'd be concerned. But also I'd be like, the boy's back in the building. Let's go. Big 48. I gotta admit it. I got my biases. I always admit my biases. I would be like, let's see what's going on. They were non-consecutive terms too, so it would be possible. I heard something about the term limit being 2 consecutive terms. Yeah, there's a lot of finagling that they're able to do legally. They have a precedent that was set by FDR. There's a lot of things that they could maneuver. And then on top of it, there is the option. I'm not saying he's going to do this, and I'm not saying that Trump would consider this, but if there is a war happening, not on American soil, okay? So it's not on American soil, but there is a war happening, then he can make the case that he needs to stay president. See, that's what Zelensky did. Zelensky did that because there was an actual war happening on his soil. So he needed to stay president, right? And a lot of people speculate that he refuses to get into any ceasefire or make this war stop because he will have to hold an election and he will be out of office, right? But if in America, there's no war happening on the soil, so every citizen's just fine, but there is a war happening somewhere else, then he could make the case that he needs to stay in. And yeah, there's a whole lot. He's got to do a fantastic job if he wants to get reelected. Yeah, there's that too, right? He's hit the ground running, and I think there's strategy to that as well. I mean, and also there's the hint of, he said about J.D. Vance that he doesn't see J.D. Vance as his successor, right? Because they were talking about midterms and J.D. Vance running and him needing Trump's endorsement. And he was like, no, I don't see him as my successor. It's very interesting. I don't know what's going to happen there. Or we see a Don Jr. step in. But Steve Bannon said on a recent podcast, it wasn't with Gavin Newsom, it was with someone else. And he's like, we're working on it. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But that would be a wild thing to see happen. And people would be so angry. It would be just a mix of people being absolutely thrilled and people being absolutely furious. And I don't know what that would look like. I would be happy. I'll admit it. I would be happy though.
Families from some of the
Who are you
people.
with?
I'm with La Nación newspaper from Argentina. There are families from some of the people that were on those flights to El Salvador that claim that they're not criminals, they're not members of Tren de Aragua, of MS-13. What can you tell them and what guarantees can you give them that everyone in those planes were actual criminals, terrorists, as you said?
Well, I was told that they went through a very strong vetting process and that that will also be continuing in El Salvador. And if there's anything like that, we would certainly want to find out. But these were a bad group. This was a bad group, and they were in bad areas, and they were with a lot of other people that were absolutely killers, murderers, and people that were really bad with the worst records you've ever seen. And but we will continue that process, absolutely. We don't want to make that kind of a mistake.
Is the U.S. planning to give up the position of NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, and if so, why?
NATO is something that I saved. NATO was gone until I came along. In fact, the previous Secretary General, very good man, both of them are good. The current man is fantastic. But both of them have said, if it wasn't for Trump, you wouldn't even have a NATO, because we were paying the cost of almost all of the countries. And now they're paying. I said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to continue. You hurt us on trade. You do bad things on trade. And then on top of it, we're supposed to pay for your military. And because of what I did, hundreds of billions of dollars flowed into NATO by countries that just weren't paying. They were delinquent. They weren't paying their bills. So NATO is solid. They're strong. But they have to treat us fairly.
Are we going to give up the...
Because, look, without us, NATO's not the same thing. And I can tell you, I've been having very good discussions, as you know, with President Zelensky and with President Putin. And President Putin will tell you that without the United States, he wouldn't be worried. But he is worried when the United States is involved. And I have to tell you, I've dealt very well with both gentlemen, and we have, I think we have the confines of a deal. I hope we have the confines of a deal. I'm doing it for two reasons. Number one, and by far most importantly, thousands of young people, and they're not American people, they're Russian and they're Ukrainian, are being killed every week, thousands a week. And also the United States has paid, because of Biden, $350 billion on a war that should have never happened. If we had a competent president in this, sitting right here, that war would have never happened. It would have absolutely never happened with me. And it didn't happen. For 4 years, it didn't happen.